Originally billed as a swamp fighter, one G.I. Joe soldier is not only home in, but also ruthlessly deadly in a wide range of terrain from swamp to arid desert and across a variety of mission types. Who is he? Let's talk about Muskrat. Before we do though, let me say thank you for watching JL's Comics. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. I upload content just like this each and every week. Alright, let's jump into the story. Ross Williams was born and raised in Thibodaux, Louisiana, and its surrounding swamps where he spent his formative years and, truthfully, entire days knee-deep in swamp water hunting wildlife like raccoons, wild pigs, possums, and gators. He would run into poachers, meth labs, moonshiners, smugglers, and prison chain gang absconders and state custody fugitives out in that unforgiving terrain. Despite being young, Ross managed to hold his own. It steeled his nerves, his resolve, and his fighting skills so that by the time he was old enough to join the United States Army, passing up to Ranger School in the Jungle Warfare Training Center, he was more than ready. So ready, in fact, that Ranger training seemed easy to him. Based on his upbringing, he took on the codename Muskrat, named after the wetland rodent of the same name. According to Mark Bellomo's Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe, he was almost called, among other things, Wet Willie, Bayou, Swamp Dog with a W, and a few others, so say what you want about the name Muskrat. All things considered, I think it turned out for the best. All of this training and experience made him more than ready for the G.I. Joe team, and he joined up with the Joes in Larry Hama's 80th comic book issue of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. In that issue, Muskrat was on a team with Charbroil, Hardball, and Hit and Run, led by Outback and Jumpmaster Ripcord to jump onto an unstable landmass that had sprung up in the Gulf of Mexico. They had to take it and hold the high ground before Cobra claimed it, as they did previously with Cobra Island. This issue immediately established Muskrat's gruff and coarse attitude. He didn't quite understand the situation and the mission parameters, but knew just enough to shoot back. They engaged in a very intense firefight with Firefly and Mindbender's forces, but the island sank, so it was all a waste of time at the end. He then joined up with Stryker, Shockwave, Repeater, and Hawk to help General Colton at his SDI laser atop the Chrysler building in New York City. Cobra was assaulting the top secret post. At one point, Muskrat was with Colton as Colton pulled out a handgun. "That's an old Army issue Colt 45 M1911A1. I thought all you government types packed a new 9mm Beretta," he said to General Colton. This man knows his weapons. Cobra disguised as Iron Grenadiers breached and Muskrat was actually hit in the shoulder. At the end of issue 86, Muskrat was the one with the meta joke. Joe and Jane revealed that Joe Colton was the original G.I. Joe, and Muskrat said, "I always thought you were bigger," referring to the size of the original Joes before the 3 3/4 inch line. Later, Muskrat was in Rio Lindo in an amphibious IFV called Warthog, which was disguised as a Miss Sierra Gordo beauty pageant float for a parade through downtown Rio Lindo. They were there to rescue Shockwave and Recondo, along with Dinah and Dragonsky of the October Guard, who were being held captive at the NABM, the North American Banana Monopoly headquarters. The float team was Muskrat, Stalker, Repeater, Scoop, and Backblast. This rescue op happened to be occurring at the same time that some Joes were on a team to demonstrate the Thunderclap for El Jefe, and Voltar also had his forces invading the city to usurp power from El Jefe. Muskrat jumped off the Warthog to open the cage holding the prisoners, and as Dinah came out, he introduced himself, but she'd already read his dossier. He seemed happy that she knew who he was. I think he wanted to take her out for dinner. Maybe some pancakes or cook her some possum. In the Centennial 100th issue, Muskrat was in the desert outside the pit with Dusty. They detected visually a python stun that wasn't showing up on the pit's array of radar and infrared. There was also a python conquest in the area jamming all radio frequencies. Azarana on the stun was trying to get within range to activate Clutch and Rock and Roll's implants. So Muskrat and Dusty jumped on a Mean Dog with Wildcard to pursue Zarana's python stun. In the next issue, General Hollingsworth gave Muskrat, LJ, Flint, and Roadblock a critical mission. It was so secret they couldn't open the orders until they were in flight. A massive Soviet transport plane landed in the desert in the middle of the night, and as they drove their Desert Fox into the cargo area to be strapped down, they realized it was a Russian Antonov Condor that was also carrying the new October Guard. It turned out that they were on a joint op to advise rebels in Sierra Gordo who were trying to take their country back from Destro and Cobra's vile grasp. But then one of Darklon's Televipers shot the plane with a SAM fired from one of Destro's Razorbacks. Once they crashed down at the airport, Destro's Demon Tanks and Razorbacks chased the Desert Fox and the October Guard's BMP through the jungle. LJ had Muskrat use the main gun on the Desert Fox, a 20mm auto-loading cannon, to stuff a heat round down one of the Razorback's throats, and so Muskrat put a round right through the canopy window. Cobra Condor started pounding the jungle in the area with napalm and cluster bombs, and during one of their runs, Muskrat was hit and wounded. He told LJ he was hurting but hanging in there. Against all odds, the team made it out. During the Battle of Benzene, Muskrat was on the Deep Recon team along with Tunnel Rat and Roadblock. They were in the Benzene sewers trying to make their way to a position where they could help Recon Team Bravo, who were pinned down topside near a Porsche dealership. They managed to get up there, flank the Cobra, and help their teammates, but not before incurring some losses. Muskrat helped hold the base as wave after wave of Cobra bats attempted to invade the pit. The Cobra forces threw a torn up bat over the Joes, which, because it was an android, was able to shoot at them. So Muskrat punched it full of a 12-gauge double-aught buck. But despite that blast from his boomstick, they had to fall back. The team popped up on the surface through camouflaged ventilation shafts, but Cobra helicopters opened fire on their position from the air. Muskrat's boonie hat took a direct hit. Luckily, it wasn't on his head at the time. Much later, Darklon escaped from the pit. Muskrat, Ambush, and Outback pursued Darklon into the desert with a hammer. Muskrat correctly deduced that it was the plan all along to let Darklon escape so that the Joes could track him. They tried to flank Darklon's position using the inky black darkness of the desert night as cover. But Darklon popped up with a sniper rifle, had Muskrat in his sights, but Outback shot a flare, and then Lowlight jumped up out of nowhere, shot the rifle out of Darklon's hands at the last possible moment, and saved our friend Muskrat. Darklon then ran, and Muskrat had him in his sights, but he couldn't shoot. Darn ROE, he said, disappointed that the rules of engagement said he couldn't put Darklon down. Darklon got away, and his Krytron nuclear trigger plot continued to unfold. Muskrat later headed to San Francisco along with Alpine and Long Range to establish their West Coast presence in Storm Shadow's old dojo. Here they met with Budo, who was already at the dojo, and it's from here that they were tasked with heading into a village in Olistan to extract Dr. Adele Burkhardt from insurgents. Long Range was on Overwatch while Torpedo and Muskrat entered the village, efficiently clearing it building by building. Alpine stayed behind as egress leader. Once Muskrat and Torp pulled out their contacts, Alpine led the team into the mountains away from the village. As they pulled Adele up over a cliff to the summit, she was grazed in the leg by a bullet, and Muskrat said he was cross-trained as a medic and was able to get a field dressing on her wound quickly. They barely made it out, but Dr. Burkhardt sacrificed herself to save Alpine. In issue 206, Muskrat, Torpedo, and Alpine went to the funeral of Dr. Burkhardt to pay their respects to her and to her family, and they presented Adele's brother with a medal based on her service. And then a couple issues later, Muskrat, Alpine, and Long Range were back to their new Bay Area billets. In issue 215, just after Snake Eye's funeral, Scarlet took a recovering throwdown to Snake Eye's High Sierra cabin, and that night a group of night creepers attempted to assault the cabin. Some Joes, Muskrat included, were watching though and took them all out with shovels, knives, and silent weapons. It was brutal and bloody. His next mission found him dropped into Shazadar, a sliver of former emirate between Benzene and Trucial-Abysmia. CoverGirl was leading a fire team consisting of Muskrat, Repeater, and Leatherneck. With a Chenoweth DPV and a M1288 Flyer, a light strike vehicle, they had to traverse through the war-torn micronation to rescue 3 stranded UN relief workers. They went around one particular town full of enemy. Muskrat said as Leatherneck laid into the mud brick building with his machine gun that if they'd gone through the town, they'd have been chopped up by crossfire. Did you learn that in the swamp? Leatherneck asked him. No, he said. He learned that in a book called The Art of War by a General Giap of the Vietnamese People's Army who found inspiration in the works of Sun Tzu. Our boy Muskrat is well read. They were pursued away from town. Drone-launched Hellfires took care of that since Muskrat's bullets weren't penetrating their armor. They linked up with Halo Team, the UN workers, and a busload of orphans. And with 6 technicals on their tail and just 1 Hellfire left on Joystick's drone, it became a Mad Max race back to the Herc, the C-130. Finally, for the rescue op, to get Sean Collins throw down fake Snake Eyes out of the town of Springfield, Duke had Muskrat, Torp, and Long Range in charge of the pit and its defenses, but that did not last long. As the buses rolled out and headed towards Springfield, Colton dropped in with a Tomahawk with a replacement satellite, and Muskrat helped supervise the rollout of the Defiant space shuttle so they could put the replacement in orbit. And not once to remain behind, LJ, Freefall, Wetsuit, Tunnel Rat, Ripcord teamed up with Torpedo and Muskrat, and they dropped in from the air. They actually landed on the roof of the Springfield Community Center, while their allies, the October Guard, happened to be on the ground outside. They started clearing the building top down, room by room, until they ran into some red shirts for a violent CQB battle in a stairwell. And that's where we leave our friend Muskrat in early fall 2020, still kicking ass after all these years. Muskrat did have a couple special missions appearances over the years as well. Muskrat was on one of the Joes who responded to the Nexus Tech hostage situation in Siliconville that ended up being a cover-up to bury government contract fraud and classified blueprints stored on microfilm. Andy Kubert drew Muskrat on the cover of Special Missions issue 19 with a white boonie hat. They took off from the USS Flag in the Gulf of Thailand, where Wild Bill took Muskrat and the team up the Mekong Delta to extract Snake Eyes, Chuckles, Scarlet, and Iceberg. Muskrat had to help Lifeline dump a fuel drum out of the Tomahawk that was hit by ground fire before it exploded. Muskrat was hit with fire from a 12.7mm Gatling gun in the nose of a Hind D gunship on their flank. That's the third time he's been shot if you're keeping score. Despite the obstacles, they got to their teammates and pulled them out. Special Mission issue 23 was called Scoop, and it opened where Muskrat was shooting with Stalker, Lowlight, Leatherneck, and Tunnel Rat. And this turned out to be live fire training on the deck of the USS Flag. They had to babysit a noob named Scoop for an op that quickly went foobar, with Tunnel Rat this time getting shot. And because of the timing of his release, Muskrat didn't make it into the Sunbow series, and Deke didn't use him either. Muskrat was animated, however, for television commercials like the one in 1993 for the Shark 9000, and that's Shark with a K, not a T, just to clarify. Now on to the action figures. Muskrat's action figure first released in 1988. Benelli's Super 90 shotgun, machete, and swamp skimmer at the ready. A rare Target exclusive 2-pack was also released that carded Muskrat with the Voltar, called Ultimate Enemies. But that swamp skimmer, though, it's a boogie board basically, not the most practical thing. 1989, Muskrat was part of Night Force, probably my favorite of the sub-teams that were coming out at the time. He came in a 2-pack along with Spearhead and Spearhead's partner Max. I guess it's a 3-pack. This set was exclusive to Toys R Us. In 1993, Muskrat became the heavy fire specialist for the Battle Corps line. He was one of the Joes selected for the DEF, the Drug Elimination Force line, but as that was canceled, he was moved over to Battle Corps. This is why his file card here mentions the headhunters, the drug dealers. He traded in his trademark boonie hat for a helmet and his shotgun for an arsenal of weaponry, which included an orange missile launcher. And the crazy thing about this missile launcher is that it attaches to the side of his face. Well, not his face per se, but this new helmet he's supposed to wear. And that keeps his hands free for all the other weapons he's packaged with. He's a heavy weapons specialist after all, so he's got to have a lot. A couple figures released outside of America, like the one in Australia, for example, which still had him carded as DEF. In 2013, the G.I. Joe Collectors Club released a 4th Muskrat. Now Ross is the Night Force Swamp Fighter again, and included in the Night Force Nocturnal Fire box set that was sold at the G.I. Joe convention in Indianapolis, Indiana that year. In 2015, the G.I. Joe Collectors Club released a FSS Muskrat figure, now mostly back to his original greens, blacks, and a couple weapons motif. So he really did come full circle. And with that, we've also come full circle. That's a wrap on this, my friends. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you can be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.